Hello, everyone. Josh Friedman here. For those expecting Tony Segreto, I'd like to welcome you all to our Insiders Briefing on the University of Miami Endowment. And we'll get started in just a moment, but before we do, I want to go through some quick Zoom logistics. If you have questions throughout the entire program, feel free to ask them by using the Q&A function. And now I'd like to welcome you and start by talking about some of the August panelists that we've brought together to give you an insider's understanding of not just our endowment, but the impact that our endowment is having. And there's really few gifts more special than a gift to the endowment. Our endowment forms the bedrock support that the university is built upon. And it's a gift of ultimate trust, not only in the institution today, but what it's going to become in perpetuity. And we're grateful that you joined us today, the hundreds of endowment donors, to hear a little bit about how our endowment is performing, the team that's supporting it and guiding it along, and introduce some of the folks who are directly benefiting from the endowment and from the investments that you've made in this wonderful institution. I want to start first by introducing a fantastic panelist, a double alumna herself with a bachelor's of arts and a law degree. She comes from a family of Canes. All three of her children are University of Miami Hurricanes. She's the vice chair of the Board of Trustees and the chair of the Investments Committee, where she works closely with Jackie Trevisano, our executive vice president, chief operating officer, as well as Charmel Maynard, who is the university's chief investment officer and treasurer. Let me introduce now Lori Silvers. She and her husband, Mitchell, are incredible supporters of the institution. They are endowment donors and actually have an endowed distinguished professorship that they've created and 2 named scholarships that are endowed as well. Lori wears many different hats at the institution, but most importantly for this conversation on the Investments Committee is guiding the direction of the endowment forward. And Lori, can I ask you to say a few words from your perspective as a trustee? How do you perceive the endowment, where we are and where we're going?
Sure. Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate your kind words. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here and to have this opportunity to speak about the performance of the endowment and our perspective. So the way I look at it is the transformational power of education endowments are the best way to permanently support the university's efforts to transform lives. It's pretty big, pretty important stuff. And that's why I am a donor to the endowment. As a university trustee and chair of the Investments Committee, I have the unique ability to look at endowments from both the donor perspective and the university's perspective. As donors, we invest in endowments to provide lasting financial support for the university and the areas that we are particularly passionate about, such as scholarships, faculty chairs, or specific programs. As for the university, as President Frank says, endowments create a continuous, virtuous circle. They help us to retain stellar faculty, attract the most talented students, foster cutting-edge research, and innovative programs that have unlimited potential. Combined, this generates a tradition of excellence that continuously renews and provides for a strong attraction for the most talented students and faculty who can accomplish great and outstanding achievements, ensuring that the University of Miami continues to make a difference for generations to come. We will be discussing later in the program how invaluable they are in helping the university maintain diversity, making it possible for students who might not otherwise be able to attend the university have the opportunity to do so. Further, and never more important than it is right now, a robust endowment helps to ensure the institution's financial stability. The endowment provides a constant and predictable source of annual income, while providing security and a basis for long-range financial planning. Donors want to be assured that their university endowment donations are being invested in the most fiscally sound and socially responsible ways. And I can assure you that the university is fully committed to upholding the highest standards of fiduciary responsibility. Among the standing committees of the University of Miami's Board of Trustees is the Investments Committee, of which I'm honored to chair. This committee oversees the institution's investment portfolios, advises the administration on investment matters, sets investment policy and other policies related to endowment management. We also make appropriate recommendations looking at both short-term and long-term goals. The University of Miami's investment policy for endowments, adopted by the Board of Trustees, calls for the majority of the university's endowment to be invested in the growth pool, a balanced portfolio of equities, bonds, alternative investments, and cash equivalents, as provided by the university's investment policy. Under the board's guidance, last year the university put in place various initiatives to optimize the growth pool. And now, Associate Vice President, Chief Investment Officer, and University Treasurer, Charmel Maynard, will provide some more detailed glimpse into how some of these measures contributed to the strong performance of the university's endowment in fiscal 2020. Charmel?
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate that introduction and that overview of the endowment. To all those who are on, my name is Charmel Maynard. I'm the Chief Investment Officer and Treasurer of the University of Miami. First off, I want to say thank you to all of our current and future donors for your generosity and support. With that, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the growth pool's recent performance, as well as an overall overview of the growth pool. With that, Bridget, can you please turn to page 1? Next page, please. Thank you. So despite tremendous volatility in the first half of the calendar year of 2020, we're pleased to report that the growth pool ended fiscal year 20 at an all-time high and also ended with a positive return of 2.2%. This is, I would like to say this is net of spending distribution of about $41 million that we will discuss the impact of. Next slide, please. The growth pool, the goal of the growth pool is to ensure current and future university spending requirements can be met while preserving purchasing power through asset growth. As depicted below, the university has been successful in this endeavor, as over the past 50+ years, the GP has generated annual returns of approximately 8.3%, which is above the hurdle rate of 7.5%. Below in the chart, you can see the growth of $10,000 from 1975 to today. If one were to donate $10,000 back in 1975, it would be worth approximately $392,000 today, as of 5/31/20. Next slide, please. The growth pool's annual spending is about 4.5% of the 3-year moving average of the market value, which equates to approximately $41 million for fiscal year 20. By employing a multi-period average, we provide stability in the payout for budgeting purposes so that large drawdowns have a more muted impact. In fiscal year 18, given the return environment and in line with best practices at the time, the university slightly lowered our spending rate from 5% to 4.5%. In an effort to smooth that impact, we lowered the rate over a 3-year period beginning with fiscal year 19. And this year, for fiscal 21, was the first year of the last 3 years that 4.5% will be even across the last 3 years. The spending policy is reviewed annually for suitability. You can see in the pie chart in the bottom right of the slide that approximately 70% of the spending goes to chairs/professorships, scholarships, and research. Next slide, please. Lastly, as discussed on previous slides, the goal of the portfolio is to grow annually so that we meet spending requirements as well as to protect purchasing power. And the portfolio is structured to meet those goals over the long term while mitigating downside in periods of volatility. Portfolio construction is executed through 6 asset classes, including public equity, fixed income, absolute return, private equity, real assets, and cash. Our portfolio allocations, as Lori mentioned, are issued by the Investments Committee and approved by the Board of Trustees. The university utilizes index-like passive funds in efficient markets and employs active management where the opportunity for excess returns and substantial and persistent are identifiable. And with that, I'd like to pass it back to Josh. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmel. I'm sure that there will be questions for you, and we'll be coming back in a little bit for a Q&A. I'll remind all of our guests that if you have questions, to please use the Q&A function on your screen, and we will be able to start asking those as we move back into the questions and answers. When I sit with President Frank, we talk about endowment. One of the things that he always reinforces is that endowment is an important concept, but endowment is actually supporting people, that there is a human face to endowment and to the impact that these investments make, not just now, but forever. And I think a good way to capture that is by bringing some of the people who have actually been the recipients of endowment support to let them tell their story. And we'll start with a video from our scholarship luncheon. And I know that many people who are joining us today come to that scholarship luncheon and get to meet some of their students in person and hear how their investments and how endowment scholarship has changed their lives. We have a short video, only a few minutes long, capturing some of those moments to be able to give a flavor of the human face of endowment. Let's show the video.
I had the benefit of being a scholarship student, both in my undergraduate career as well as at the University of Miami Law School. It was the single most important reason that compelled me to come here. And I was waiting tables to put myself through school. It made all the difference in the world to me. And to come to the University of Miami was the best decision I ever made. And I am sure the scholarship students in this room feel the same way.
Being invested in by this university, I don't take it for granted. There was once a time where students who looked like me were not allowed to attend this type of university.
My scholarship has allowed me to accomplish my goal of becoming a nurse at UM and given me the opportunity to learn from the best of the faculty.
My scholarship completely opened my world. Had I not received a scholarship to the U, I would still be in New England. I would not have seen Santiago or Prague or the depths of the ocean.
I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. And it's that empowerment that we're given with this scholarship, that empowerment that we can carry on the dreams of our ancestors who just had that singular hope. And that wouldn't be here, that wouldn't be present without the generosity of these donors and everyone who just believed in us along that way.
Offering a scholarship is already big enough. And by just giving one, you're telling students with hard circumstances like me, or circumstances that seem very impossible to get out of, that you believe in us.
It is moments like this that renew our faith in the human spirit, because what we see here is the personification of that conjunction of promise and talent with generosity and the leaving of a legacy behind us.
I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. That's an amazing statement. I'd like to bring into the conversation now someone who is also embodying the impact and the power that endowment has. Dr. Kevin Nori, who, and I'm going to, he has so many different accolades, professor of dermatology, ophthalmology, otolaryngology, and surgery. He is the Lewis C. Skinner Jr., MD, Endowed Chair in Dermatology, and the Richard Helfman Professor of Dermatologic Surgery. He's the director of the Mohs and Dermatologic Laser and Laser Surgery Center. He is director of surgical training, and he is in the Dr. Philip Frost Department of Dermatology and Cutaneous Surgery at the University of Miami Leonard M. Miller School of Medicine. Dr. Nori, thank you so much for joining the conversation today.
Thank you very much, Josh. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, you are in the position where you are supported by 2 named endowments, and maybe it's just a place to start. Why don't you talk a little bit about how these endowed positions support you and the work that you're doing at the Miller School of Medicine?
Thank you very much. First of all, I have to say it's an absolute honor and pleasure for me to be here. It's really a big privilege. And to give you a little bit of a background about myself, so I have been both a faculty as well as an alumni of Miller School of Medicine, as well as actually alumni of Miami Herbert Business School. So actually I'm a dual alumni of this great institution, and had the pleasure of being associated with this institution for actually over 26 years. So for a very long time, and a very long time to be associated with this fantastic institution. So to summarize, I think that the endowment actually provides you with 3 very big things. Number 1, it's the highest honor and prestige that any faculty can receive in their academic career. Gives a special worth to the recipient, gives support and time to do academic and investigative work. It allows people to publish and share the knowledge among the peers. In my case, I was able to publish about 11 textbooks, over 300 peer-reviewed papers, and over 150 book chapters. It gives you all-opportunity to share your expertise both at national as well as international levels. Pretty much having an opportunity to go to all over the globe and then share your expertise. And in this way, you have the opportunity to elevate the reputation of the University of Miami, Miller School of Medicine, and then Frost Department of Dermatology. The second big thing that it does, it gives you an opportunity to innovate. So innovate in terms of research and investigative work to come up with lots of new ideas. We were fortunate to work on several different things during my time here at the University of Miami, including scars, improvement of scars, tumor markers in terms of diagnosing of skin cancer, as well as actually therapeutic application of these tumor markers, and also looking at some imaging of the skin. Clinically, also improving the outcome of our patients. Again, in terms of the imaging, trying better ways to diagnose cancers and skin lesions in general, perhaps with the skin imaging modalities, such as optical coherence tomography and others, to better image the skin. And with a combination of artificial intelligence and skin imaging, maybe get to the point that later on we may not need to biopsy a skin, and perhaps we can just use these devices to make the diagnosis without doing a skin biopsy. And then the last thing, and that I should mention, and obviously there's many other advantages that I'm not going to be able to mention in a short time, is being able to do things that you couldn't otherwise do. So donor generosity actually enables amazing outcomes, many amazing outcomes that are not possible otherwise. Grateful patients are the key to many of the things that we do. Patients come to our institution because of the high level of care and the cutting edge procedures that we offer them. So in a nutshell, that is what I've got from this endowment.
It's unbelievable. I love the idea that your endowed chair gives you that flexibility. I know the pressures that physician scientists are under. How many different things, your day broken up into almost minute increments between seeing patient in clinic, running research, writing scholarly journals, just the amount of things that you have to accomplish, and that a chair can provide you with windows of real flexibility where you can look out towards the horizon. I like the way you put that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And it's absolutely true. I think, again, as I mentioned, it is the highest possible honor that you can get, but also offering you an opportunity to innovate, provide you support and time to do it. So,
Now, I don't believe, if I understand correctly, that you did not have the direct opportunity to get get to know Doctors Skinner or Helfman.
Right.
But tell me about how you think about their legacy and the work that you're doing.
So, I mean, just like you mentioned, Josh, unfortunately, I did not have the privilege of getting to know Dr. Skinner and Dr. Helfman. But basically, as far as I can, I know from their legacies that there were two very well-known dermatologists that were associated with our department and University of Miami. And thanks to their expertise and care and philanthropy, they continue to serve as a role model for me as well as many future dermatologists. So every day that I actually go to work, I honor them, as well as the extraordinary generous donors that make these two chairs possible. I should probably mention that I'm particularly grateful to a friend and a mentor, Mr. Norman Brayman, for his leadership in establishing the Helfman professorship and for his great support throughout my career. The philanthropy that was made because of these two endowed chairs actually inspired additional generous donors, many generous donors, to contribute more to our research. So actually it was a seed that caused many additional philanthropy and contribution to us and our research. So just like you just showed us in the very beautiful video a few minutes ago, President Frank could not have expressed it better than in the video that we just watched, that supporting endowment is personification of that conjunction of promise and talent, generosity and leaving a legacy. So in a nutshell, I think, this was a bit of the history of my endowment. And again, I'm extremely grateful to the people that I mentioned and many, many people that have contributed to us through the years and with their generous contribution and donations.
You know, as I'm hearing you speak and I'm sort of thinking a little bit about what an endowment means, it's certainly a gift that transcends time, because you make a gift and then it continues to have impact on and on and on. But you are also working to have impact on and on. You want to talk a little bit about the mentorship that you're doing and how you're paying it forward to future generations of physicians and scientists?
Thank you so much, Josh, for that. Yes, I think the key actually is to pay it forward. It's exactly what you're saying. It's about sharing the knowledge and kind of training the next generation to take care of our patients. So I'm lucky to be part of one of the greatest dermatology programs in the country that actually has one of the largest residency programs in the country. And training the next generation of doctor is an incredible reward that comes from just the fact that you are lucky enough to train the next generation. So being the academic medicine, you have many fortunate things. Number one, clearly gives you opportunity to take care of your patients in the best possible care. And number two, gives you a way to train the next generation to take care of our future and our patients that are coming up after us. So it is a great legacy to leave behind in our own roles. And I'm also fortunate enough in my role to be the head of our international observership program. And actually, because of the reputation of our department, people from all over the globe come to University of Miami, and I literally mean all over the globe, to spend time with us in varying amount of times to learn about various aspects of dermatology, dermatologic surgery, skin cancer treatment, among others. So it's extremely exciting to be working at the University of Miami and for us, Department of Dermatology, to have that opportunity to, again, in this way, be able to share the knowledge. So.
I want to bring the entire panel back, but before I do, I have one question. You mentioned that, and you said that an endowed chair is the highest honor, and I appreciate that, but I'd like to push on that a little bit further. When you go to a conference, when you speak internationally, when you're traveling, what does being identified not just as a senior faculty member and an accomplished researcher, but also being identified as the Lewis C. Skinner Endowed Chair and the Helfman Professor, how does that change the perception, or how does that elevate your voice when you are out on an international platform talking about your research and your efforts?
It clearly elevates your credibility as an individual and as a person who's actually sharing the knowledge. So having been recognized by your patients or the people that you know that don't donate to you generously clearly puts at a different level when you're talking on the podium or sharing your knowledge. So for sure, it impacts the authenticity and also the credibility of you as a person and as an individual and as a scientist and clinician to share your knowledge. So having that trust that someone trusted so much in you to make a big contribution to you clearly elevates you as your status as a person and as a credible scientist and clinician and academician.
Wonderful. We've been getting some great questions. So I'm going to ask Lori and Charmel to turn back on your video, and I'm going to go through some of the questions that people have been asking. And I encourage you, if you have additional questions, to please use the Q&A function, and we're going to try to get to as many as we possibly can, promising that we will make sure that everyone gets to leave on time. But first, a question for you, Lori. As Charmel was mentioning earlier, our investment performance this past year was very strong, but this is clearly an uncertain time. And as the investment committee is thinking about this uncertainty, how are you, from your fiduciary position and as trustees, how are you helping us navigate these challenging times?
Well, thank you for that softball question. It's there.
They just get harder from here. They're starting at the beginning.
Okay, but fair enough. I mean, that's probably the question that everybody wants to know the answer to, including me. And Charmel can attest to this. I am constantly asking him, what can we do? What should we be looking at? What are we not doing? What research are we not, going through and trying to determine what's going to happen as we're going through this process, but I also want us to keep our eye on what happens when we get out of this process. So the one thing that I can say that it's kind of been my mantra is constant communication. I don't want the time to go by where we're complacent and we've checked all the boxes, we've made our investments, and now let's just wait a little bit and see how things are going. No, that's not how we operate. We're constantly talking to internally to our professionals, and we're constantly talking to our outside consultants. We are doing research. We are asking peers. We're just trying to get as much information as we possibly can. These are very choppy waters. And if I could just do a shout out to the team that we have at the university, they're just incredible. They are just incredible. If I had to rely on anybody, if I had to build the perfect team, it would be from Charmel and his group. That would be it. I would call central casting and tell them to send them to me, because it's just perfect. These people, I truly don't think they sleep. Maybe they sleep in their office or their home office, but what a great group of people. And the results from this year, this fiscal 2020, have been nothing less than stunning in what I would consider very choppy waters. So I'm very comfortable and very confident that we're doing what we can do. I guess the only thing we cannot do, that we're not doing, is read the future, but we're trying to prepare for the future.
So Charmel, I guess then we have to send the next question to you. But Lori mentioned our peers. So how do we compare to our peers, both in terms of the size of the endowment, but also the performance that we're seeing?
Yeah, no, certainly. And just before I do that, I just want to thank Lori for her guidance as the chair of the investments committee. She does a phenomenal job at guiding us, and we couldn't do what we do without her and the committee. And also, she mentioned my team, Asaf Zentler and Nick Chapman, who I can do my job because it is a heavy lift, and without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So back to your question, Josh, in terms of how we compare, I don't think it's a secret that we are slightly under-endowed compared to some of our peers, but thanks to your team, Josh, and to a lot of the people on this call, we're hopefully going to make up some of that gap, but also with some strong returns. In terms of performance, our performance has been in line or even slightly better than our peers. When you look at NACUBO, which is the National Association of College and University Business Officers, which is sort of what all of my peers and our peers look at, which is a study of endowments, about 775 U.S. colleges and universities. When you look at results over multiple periods, 1 year, 3 year, and 10-year periods, we are in line, if not slightly better, Josh. So we are proud of that. We want to continue to build on that. And I think, we have the right fundamentals and foundation to continue to outperform in the future.
Question about how you gave a sense of how the spending amount is established. And I know that this is a common question. Someone makes an investment in the endowment, but it doesn't, we create a certain amount through investment returns, and that is what's available for spending. Can you walk through, it was in your presentation, but can you walk through again how the investment committee and how you as treasurer, how you set those levels and how we establish what the prudent amount of spending it is? I think you said it very well. You didn't want it to go to spike up or down. You want it to be reliable. I think, Laura, you talked about that as well, that this is a reliable source of funding. How do you smooth out those curves, and what do you look at as you make those decisions? I'll give that to both of you to answer.
Lori, do you want me to start, or would you like to start?
Why don't I start, because I'll just give some highlights and then you can drill down a little bit deeper. Okay, so what I'm going to answer is it's formulaic. if you will. So our growth pool annual spend is 4.5%. That's what we're looking at today. And that's of the 3-year average market value. The investment committee reviews this spending rate annually for appropriateness, but that's the number, and it's a formula, and it's based, FY21 is the spending rates based on November 30th market values, and that allows for us to have predictability. So again, we're trying to figure out what we need, and that's what Charmel will get into, but I'll just talk to you about what the dollars are that have been distributed based on that formula. So in FY18, it was 40.3 million. FY19, 41.5 million. This is spend. And this year we're looking at more or less 41.8 million. So, I mean, the numbers are respectable and significant. And now I think that Charmel, it's key and very important for those that are on this call to understand where those dollars go and what they support.
Certainly, Lori, and maybe if I can add a couple of other comments. As Lori mentioned, it's a 3-year moving average, so it is the last 12 quarters. And as Josh mentioned, we do that so that there's not any large jump up or down of the actual endowment spending distribution. As you heard Lori mention, some of the amounts have been very steady, from $40 to $41.5 million, despite markets going up, markets going down. But because it's the trailing 12 quarters, you do get to smooth that out. And that is best in class and best practices amongst our peers. And one other thing that Lori mentioned was sort of the November 30th market value date for our future planning. So that helps us with predictability and being precise for budget purposes. So, when we're able to tell Dr. Nori and his team, hey, this is what your spending distribution from the endowment is going to be, and they don't, it doesn't come to the end of the year and something happened between November when we set the budget, and the end of the fiscal year, and they either have less money or more money. So it really helps that as well. Mm-hmm. As Lori mentioned, we're very, very proud. Josh mentioned it. Dr. Nori mentioned, spoke about the research and the medical front. On page 3, you saw sort of the breakdown of it. So maybe just if I can go into a little bit more detail. Of the 70% that I mentioned that goes to, professorships, medical and research and scholarships, about 35% goes to professorships and chairs. Another 22 to scholarships, and 13% goes to medical and research. The remainder of that, about 14% goes to schools and the department operations, so helping them run. Another 6% goes to learning centers, so our library, our student center, things like that. There's an other category of about 3%, and then general operations are about 7%. So as I mentioned, the overwhelming supermajority goes to, we care about all of it, but professorships, medical and research and scholarships.
Great. That's great. I know that a question came in, where can we see your presentation? I use this as an opportunity to say that we're in July and the fiscal year is closed and the audit is now occurring and all of the impacts for every single endowment are being quantified. And early in the fall, we will actually be preparing individual reports for every endowment donor so that they can see how their own endowments had impact and the overall broader impact in some of the numbers that Charmel is running through. So those, as we close out and as our audited financials close out, we begin preparing those reports, and we'll be looking forward to reaching back to all of you with that information individually soon. But I want to pick up and bring you back in, Dr. Nori. Charmel talked about how one of the things we look for is predictability, so that faculty like you who are in endowed chairs can anticipate the work ahead. So as you're thinking about this coming year, what are some of the things that are on the horizon for you? What are some of the innovations and areas that you're going to be working on in this coming year?
So as I mentioned, we have done several textbooks, about 11 so far. So this year we're working on another textbook actually on skin cancers. Hopefully it's going to be the main textbook on the subject. We have also done the last textbook and probably the most well-known one on Mohs surgery, again related to skin cancer among others. So I'm finishing up that textbook this year with obviously a big team of experts from all over the globe. And then in terms of innovation, we're working on several studies looking at skin imaging, looking at devices like optical coherence tomography to look at skin and imaging of the skin, and perhaps also trying to integrate artificial intelligence along with the imaging. So maybe one day we'll get to the point that instead of me just relying solely on a pathology for the final diagnosis, I can just look at it with these devices and make the diagnosis without an invasive procedure like a skin biopsy. So that might be something very, very interesting that may happen in the future. And also by the imaging can maybe get to the point that we can actually exactly delineate tumor margins. And so right now we do the Mohs surgery to delineate the tumor margin. So maybe with the imaging devices, we can get to the point that we can say the tumor actually finishes at this point, and we can only take that part of the skin. So these are some of the work that we're working on right now.
That's fantastic. You know, I'd love to ask a kind of different question of you, Dr. Nouri, and Lori and Charmel, you might have opinions on this as well. One of the things that scholarships or chairs do is they help people make the right decision, which is always to come to the University of Miami. And in a competitive marketplace where people, especially those who are at the top of their game, whether they are an undergrad who might be looking at a lot of different opportunities or a rising star faculty member, in your experience, Dr. Nouri, recruiting on the market for the best and the brightest dermatologists, how have chairs or named positions been useful? And then, you know, Lori and Charmel, from a student perspective, what have you understood as far as the importance of these scholarships?
So I think from my perspective, I think they're extremely important. So clearly very important to bring a highly talented clinician or scientist to the institution if you can offer them potentially an endowed position, which means, again, offering them support and time to be able to do the things that they like to work on and innovating and coming up with new ideas, new techniques, new procedures, and better ways to take care of patients ultimately. So I think it's a big, it's a very important tool to use, endowments, to attract and also retain. So it's not just attracting, it's important to attract people, but it's more important to keep them. As you know, it's a lot more difficult to keep the people in place, and it's much less expensive by retaining people rather than just hiring and recruiting a new person to come on board. So it really does two major functions. Number one, it retains the talent, retains the people that are on the grounds, helps them accomplish their goals, and come up with new ideas and new ways and better ways to take care of patients. And number two, yes, it can be used as a recruitment tool in terms of recruiting talent to our institution.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think it's Dr. Nouri, you're 100% right on the value. I mean, I don't think we have enough time left in this presentation. We probably could go on for hours. It's so important. But one of the things that I would like to mention is, well, number one, it is certainly very key in terms of diversity and allowing us to attract a student that might otherwise not have the opportunity, but nevertheless has the talent and the ability to really shine in our program. So from that perspective, it's so key and so important. But also there's all kinds of scholarships that identify perhaps even a niche in the various communities of academics and students. And the one that's coming to mind right now is the Hope Scholar. The Hope Scholar is over at the law school, which supports the education of these young lawyers as they go through the University of Miami program. And they're committed, once they leave with their wonderful degree, to go out into the world and do good. So it's not necessarily going out and getting the highest paying job right from the get-go, which I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that, and becoming good contributors to the university down the road. But nevertheless, these are young men and women that want to take their education and go out and basically work with underprivileged people, underserved people. These are incredible young people, and what they're motivated to do. And I don't know that they would ever have had the opportunity to come to the university, get a University of Miami law degree, if this Hope Scholarship program didn't exist. And I know that throughout the entire university community, there are so many more just like this that identify an incredible niche and support it. But that's just one that came to mind, and I didn't want it to go unmentioned because it's just an incredible program.
That's great. Met some of those students there. Yes, that's a fantastic program. Charmel, there was a direct question, and so I'll ask it to you just directly. With uncertain times ahead, are we reducing our endowment spend below 3.5% to ensure we weather the possible storm?
Thanks, Josh, for that question. I would say, as Lori said, we can't see the future yet, so I don't want to say that's not a possibility, but I don't think that's our intention. I think, as you mentioned and as we spoke about, I think, with the calculation of the current spending policy, it is meant to withstand large drawdowns in certain quarters. And, for us, we think that the endowment is set up, the asset allocations are there to mitigate downside risks. So, in the near term future, I would say no. That being said, the investments committee reviews the appropriateness of the spending rate yearly. So, thankfully how it works, the spending calculation is for the upcoming fiscal year. So we do have some time to build in any changes ahead of time if we think that there's a large drawdown in the market value of the endowment. But again, hopefully, unless there's some sort of sustained period of negative performance, we think that we can withstand any drawdowns and maintain that spending policy, which is so important to scholarships and departments and research, as we mentioned before.
That's great. And Lori, as the board is thinking about outside managers and investment opportunities, what screens do you use? You mentioned social responsibility, you mentioned diversity, obviously return is significant. What screens is the board looking at?
Well, through our committee, which is acting on behalf of the board, we're taking a very close look at being fiscally responsible. We look at returns, who our managers are, and what kind of returns that they can bring for our assets that are under management. But we are looking at being socially responsible as well. And Charmel, I'm going to let you, because I know you've just are in the process of completing a questionnaire, very extensive questionnaire, very involved, for all of the managers to respond to us and let us know what they're putting in place so that we make sure they have diversity within their own shop, that they're doing their research and their homework, and they're being very on top of what type of investments they're making. The last thing that I want to happen, and the one thing that we do work hard, is to make sure that the university is on top of this. We don't want ever to make knowingly an investment that is inappropriate. So we do all the research that we possibly can to make sure that the investments that we're making are responsible. And Charmel, I'll just let you add what you can to that.
Yeah, sure. No, certainly. Thank you, Lori. I mean, as President Frank laid out in his email early this month, his 15-point plan and commitment to diversity. We want to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable as well as our business partners. And we're continuing to investigate sort of the business practices of all of our vendors across the entire university, which includes the investment portfolio as well, to make sure that they reflect the university's values on things like diversity. So two ways that I'd answer this. As Lori mentioned, we're doing a very detailed assessment of our entire investment portfolio from top down, from ownership / boards, all the way down to support staff on diversity statistics, both gender as well as race. And as I mentioned, things like accountability, we want to see numbers on a page so that we can hold our business partners accountable, because that's what reflects the values of the university. Secondly, in terms of screening of managers, that is one of the filters and criteria that we use for evaluating managers. It's not just returns, it's not just Sharpe ratio, it's not just correlated excess return, but it's also diversity. We do take this seriously, and it's not just an investment portfolio, it really goes across the entire university.
Great. We're receiving so many questions, and I think that's a good opportunity for me to say that we are recording this conversation. It will be made available to you and to the hundreds of endowment donors who weren't able to join us live, so that they also have the opportunity to hear this conversation. And questions that we're not able to get to here, we're going to endeavor to be able to answer directly. So one question, and I think I can answer this one: does the university have any endowments that are not restricted to a particular purpose? And the answer is yes, absolutely. There are a number of endowments, and some that are quite significant, that people give to for the general support of the university, or for the general support of students, or for the general support of a department. Dr. Nori, of course, works in a named department, and there is an endowment supporting that entire department. So they can be specific or they can be general. The important thing, and this was another question about creating an endowment through a bequest. When we're creating an endowment, we have to remember that it's not just what we see and the way we're using the funds today, but these endowments will be supporting the institution 100 years from now. As we turn 100, these endowments will exist, will be managed by capable trustees and capable treasurers who will grow them, just as Charmel showed us that we've grown over the last 25, 30, 40 years. So the way that we want to word and work with you to codify your intentions are to make sure that future generations at the U are also able to use the funds in a way that supports whatever we're facing at that time within the bounds of your intentions. So that's part of what our development team will always be here to work with you as our endowment donors, to not just think about today, but tomorrow and many tomorrows to come. We do have time for a couple other questions. One question, and maybe Dr. Nora, you can talk a little bit about this, and then I think that Laura, you might have an interesting perspective. There was a question, I'm going to sort of paraphrase it. It's about all the other benefits of endowment. Endowments that allow you to borrow funds and increase the credit rating of the institution, or drive rankings and drive other measures of success. So maybe Dr. Nori, as you think about all the endowments supporting dermatology or medicine, what are some of the other benefits that you have seen? And then Lori or Charmel, how is simply having these endowments, how do they help accelerate things even outside of the restrictions of any particular endowment account?
So thank you, Josh. Thank you for that question. Very important question, actually. So I think, again, I think the endowment gives you an opportunity to do many things that you would otherwise not be able to do. Probably one of the biggest thing is, again, providing you more time and also more support to focus on your innovation, on the things that you're interested to do, and also to be able to have time to share the knowledge. So again, two important things. Number one, coming up with innovation, new ideas, and research. And number two, being able to share the knowledge to the next generation or their peers all over the world to better the human care overall. I think the first one is pretty obvious, innovating new techniques, new procedures, and better ways to do it. The second one, by providing you time and support to be able to publish papers and share the knowledge, write textbooks, and again, share the knowledge, attend conferences and meetings all over the world, and again, share the knowledge with your peers in a global level, and in a very diverse manner all over the world, literally, I mean, everywhere. And maybe the places that really have most of the need, in places that normally we don't really think about going, and providing them with information that they don't have it in the local level. So I think that's something that I think about quite a bit. Again, the time and support by innovation and sharing the knowledge. That is my biggest thing.
Thank you, Dr. Nori. Lori, what are your thoughts?
Well, so, and that was so well said. That kind of does give us a great perspective. But I'm gonna tell you it's a great question from 30,000 feet. So not pinpointed to anything specific. I see this as a sum of the parts, and that is why is endowment important? Number one, it's foundational. It's absolutely foundational that a university, a research university in particular, have a strong, coherent endowment program. That provides us with security, and that's key so that we feel secure in allocating the funds that are necessary for all the things that we just talked about, whether they're scholarships or endowed professorships or research, whatever it is. So you've got one and you've got two, and then you come up with number three, which is stability. And all of these things are what you absolutely must have to, all of these parts are absolutely required to get us through a stormy season like this. And God only knows, I mean, is this a once in 100-year storm? Who knows? But an endowment is all of these things. It's foundational, it provides security, and gives us the security and stability that we need to grow, to provide support to various functions, but most importantly, keep this ship going through the waters until we get out of the storm. So that's how I see the importance of the endowment.
Thank you. Charmel, any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, every day when we wake up and we think about the endowment and how do we set it up for current, past, current, and future success, the mission of the university rings very loudly in my head, right? Which is, to transform lives through education, research, innovation, and service. And, when we take our job very seriously, because when we do well, we see tangible effects on being able to enhance all of those things, which is directly, in the fabric of the university. So, I just want to thank again all the donors, current and future, for allowing us to really give back to the university. Like I said, through scholarships, through innovation, through research, because we don't take that job lightly at all.
Well, I think there it is. We heard about the innovation, we heard about stability, we heard about transforming lives. I want to end with gratitude, not only to our panelists today. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for your time with us, but also to the hundreds of people who've joined us on for this conversation. We will be, again, we've recorded it. We will be posting it for you and for those that weren't able to join. We look forward to reporting on the performance of your individual endowments this fall and on the impact they've had on the institution. So again, thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Go Canes!